It was supposed to be a relaxing day, but it turned into the total opposite. Mark, who had found the secluded lake through Google Maps, made his way through the forest that surrounded it. The water was clear as he arrived, making him eager to jump in. But as the cold water enveloped him, something cold and firm grabbed his legs. Mark's scream echoed across the lake as he struggled, realizing he was not alone. Mark splashed around in the water, trying to see what gripped his legs. He screamed for help, even though he knew no one was around to save him. Before he knew it, he swallowed up gallops of water and lost his strength. The next thing he remembered was waking up in the air, strapped to a stretcher hanging from a helicopter, high above the ground. He couldn't see his legs, but he could feel them. He thought they were taking him to a nearby hospital. As he turned his head to the side, he spotted the hospital in the distance, but he quickly realized they were moving away from it instead of toward it. But what had grabbed Mark's leg at the lake? How did he end up on the stretcher? And where was the helicopter taking him? But before we start, smash the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. The longer they flew, the more panicked Mark got. The helicopter above him was black, not the color of an emergency helicopter. Meanwhile, the burning sensation in his legs was becoming unbearable, and Mark began to scream. Suddenly, he saw hands appear from underneath him, and the stretcher was grabbed by 4 muscular men wearing white turtleneck sweaters and sunglasses. As soon as the men saw Mark was awake, they placed a napkin over his mouth and nose, and he dozed off to sleep again. Mark woke up in a hospital bed, in what seemed to be a hospital room, and was hooked to various machines beeping beside him. Both of his legs were wrapped in bandages and placed on pillows, and he had thick socks on. "Hello!" he yelled, hoping someone would hear him. Surprisingly quickly, a nurse walked into the room. "Where am I?" Mark asked, his heart racing. "You're in the hospital," the nurse said. Flashes of the men in white turtleneck sweaters flashed before his eyes as he looked the nurse up and down. The nurse looked and acted the part, but something about her made Mark suspicious. She didn't ask him as many questions as a real nurse would. She didn't even ask for his name. She simply checked his vitals, asked him what his pain level was on a scale of 1 to 10, asked him how much he remembered what happened, and left. Mark awoke to find a stern-looking doctor standing over him. The doctor's face was unreadable, eyes fixed intently on Mark's bandaged legs. Mark blinked, trying to shake off the grogginess from the sedative. "Where am I?" he croaked, his throat dry. The doctor didn't respond immediately, instead scribbling something on a clipboard. The doctor, scribbling notes, said, "You're very lucky to be alive." His tone was flat, almost mechanical. Mark tried to sit up, wincing at the pain in his legs. "What happened to me?" he asked, his voice trembling. The doctor looked up from his clipboard, his expression still impassive. "You had a close call," he said simply, offering no further explanation. Mark's frustration grew, but he bit his tongue, hoping for more information. "Why wasn't I taken to a regular hospital?" "We have the best facilities here." Mark's patience wore thin as the doctor continued to dodge his questions. Every attempt to get answers was met with the same vague responses. "Rest is what you need," the doctor said, almost dismissively. Mark's mind raced, piecing together the odd fragments of information. Days passed in a haze of pain and confusion for Mark. His legs throbbed constantly, and the sedatives they gave him left him groggy and disoriented. He noticed odd occurrences around the facility, increasing his unease. Strange noises echoed through the halls at night, and shadows flickered under his door. Once, he saw a nurse hurriedly wheel a gurney past his room, the patient on it eerily silent. The staff seemed tense, always glancing over their shoulders. Mark's gut told him something was very wrong here, and he became more determined to uncover the truth. Other patients were wheeled in and out with similar leg injuries. Mark watched from his bed as nurses moved them swiftly down the hallway, their faces pale and drawn. A sympathetic nurse named Emily finally answered some of Mark's questions. She entered his room quietly, her expression softening when she saw him. "You must have so many questions," she said gently. Mark nodded, desperation in his eyes. "What's happening to me? Why am I here?" "I'll tell you what I can. But you need to be careful. They're always watching. You need to know that this place isn't what it seems." Mark's heart raced. "What do you mean?" he pressed. Emily shook her head. "Just be cautious and trust no one. There are eyes everywhere." She squeezed his hand, a silent promise to help him. Emily explained, her eyes darting around nervously. "You have to act normal. Don't let them suspect you know anything." Mark nodded, his mind racing. The realization that he was being watched added a new layer of fear. "Why are they doing this?" he asked. Emily hesitated, then said, "It's complicated, but you're not alone." Mark asked if they would ever let him go, but Emily remained silent. The reality of his situation settled heavily in his chest. "What do I do now?" he asked, more to himself than to her. Emily sighed, her face filled with sorrow. "Just stay strong," she whispered, "and be ready for anything." Emily devised a plan to help Mark escape from the facility. Late one night, she slipped into his room, her face determined. "We don't have much time," she whispered urgently. Mark's eyes widened with hope. "You have a plan?" he asked. Emily nodded. "I've been watching the guards, noting their patterns. We can get you out, but you need to trust me." Mark nodded, his heart pounding with a mix of fear and hope. She detailed the facility's layout and the guards' shift changes. Emily spread a crude map on the bed. "The guards change shifts at midnight," she explained, pointing to various exits. "There's a brief window when security is lax." Mark studied the map, memorizing the paths. Mark swallowed hard, steeling himself for the task. They decided to make their move during the night. The minutes ticked by slowly, each one a painful reminder of what was at stake. Security would be at its weakest during the night, offering a chance. Emily had timed it perfectly. Their moment to escape had finally come. He knew the risks, but he also knew they had to try. As night fell, Emily quietly wheeled Mark out of his room. Emily moved with practiced stealth, her eyes darting around for any sign of danger. They navigated the dimly lit corridors, avoiding patrolling guards. Emily seemed to know every turn, guiding them through a maze of hallways and stairwells. Just as they neared the exit, an alarm blared, causing chaos. "We've been spotted!" Emily shouted, urgency in her voice. Mark's panic surged as he saw guards rushing from all directions. Mark stumbled to his feet, pain shooting through his legs, but the adrenaline pushed him forward. Emily pulled Mark through the chaos, dodging guards and weaving through panicked crowds. "This way," she urged, leading him down a narrow hallway. They burst through a final door, emerging into the cold night air. The chill hit them like a wave, but they didn't stop. "We're almost there," Emily shouted, glancing over her shoulder. The facility's alarms blared behind them, and they could hear the pursuers closing in. The sound of helicopters and barking dogs filled the night. He shouted, his voice cracking. Emily's eyes widened, but she kept moving. "We have to keep going," she urged. "We're almost there," Emily reassured him, though her own exhaustion was evident. Mark grit his teeth, focusing on putting one foot in front of the other. They needed to hide until morning to avoid capture. "We'll find somewhere to lay low," Emily said, scanning the darkness. They reached a small, abandoned cabin and collapsed inside to catch their breath. Mark sank to the floor, his legs screaming in agony. Emily quickly closed the door behind them, her chest heaving with exertion. "We made it." Emily tended to Mark's wounds, providing much-needed relief. She found an old first aid kit in the corner and began cleaning the cuts on his legs. She explained that the safe house was used by other escapees. "This place has been a refuge for many," Emily said, wrapping a bandage around Mark's leg. "There have been others like you, running from the same nightmare." Mark's eyes widened. "How many?" he asked. Emily sighed. "More than you'd think. This cabin has saved lives before, and it will save ours tonight." For the first time in days, Mark felt a glimmer of hope. They prepared to rest and plan their next move. As they rested, Emily revealed the truth about the lake and Mark's attack. "There's something you need to know," she began, her voice low. "The creature that attacked you wasn't normal," Emily continued. "It was part of an experiment that went horribly wrong." Mark's heart sank. "What kind of experiment?" he asked, dreading the answer. She explained that a mutated fish, part of a failed experiment, had attacked him. "The facility was experimenting with genetic modifications," Emily said. "They were trying to create a new species, but things went out of control. The fish you encountered was one of their creations." Mark's mind raced as he processed this information. Mark was taken to the secret facility for observation due to the attack. "They needed to monitor you," Emily explained, "to see if there were any side effects from the attack." Mark shuddered at the thought. "That's why they didn't take me to a regular hospital," he realized. "Exactly," Emily confirmed. "They couldn't risk anyone finding out what they were doing." "How many others have been affected?" he asked. Emily looked away. "Too many," she replied. "They've tried to keep it all hidden, but the truth is too big to stay buried forever." Mark's anger burned hotter. Mark realized he was one of many victims of the facility's experiments. The thought was chilling. "There are others out there, just like me," he said quietly. Emily nodded. "Yes, and they all deserve justice." Mark's resolve hardened. "We have to stop them," he said. Emily smiled faintly. "I knew you'd say that," she replied. "We'll take them down together." Armed with the truth, Mark and Emily planned their next steps carefully. "We need evidence," Emily said. "Something undeniable." Mark nodded. "And we have to get it out to the public," he added. They knew they had to expose the facility's activities to the world. They discussed how to infiltrate the facility and gather evidence. "I'm not letting them get away with this," he said fiercely. Emily squeezed his hand. "We'll do this together," she said. The thought of bringing the truth to light and stopping the experiments gave Mark strength. "We have to be smart and fast," he said. Emily nodded, ready for the challenge. They prepared to take action and bring down those responsible for the horrors. "We need to move tonight," Emily said, packing a small bag with essentials. Mark gathered his strength, the pain in his legs a constant reminder of their mission. "We'll sneak in, get the evidence, and get out," he said. They both knew the risks, but the thought of justice drove them forward. Together, they set out, ready to end the nightmare. In the end, they were able to collect evidence and publish it to the general public, and everything the facility was doing was exposed. Tell us what you think about this story and share it with your friends. It might inspire them and brighten their day.